Welcome back, traders, to today's video on trading NASDAQ 100 using the volume profile as a guide, or you could say analyzing the NASDAQ 100 using the volume profile as a guide. Because obviously we do the analysis and then obviously we trade, and that trade isn't really on camera, but we do use the volume profile to help us get around the sticky situations of the market. So with that said and done, right, if you're new to this channel, right, I'm not going to turn around and say, hey, hit the subscribe button. I mean, I want you to do all of that, but I'm not going to say that right now. If you're new to this channel, there's a really important piece of detail that you really need to know. Right, first things first is we use the volume profile to help us with our analysis and ultimately our trades, right? What I talk to you guys on this channel about, it is about the volume profile and how I use it particularly to trade, right? Now, there is a whole section of videos as to how I use the volume profile. I strongly recommend you go into my channel page, right, where you will find a playlist on volume profile. And there is a video there where I basically break down my strategy brand new. So if you want to understand or use how I trade to trade for yourself, then ultimately you can go check those out, right? Because what it is that it just saves me from having to re-explain everything in every single video. And sometimes I feel like I have to do it because there's new people jumping on board all the time, right? But however, I just want to save everyone a bit of time and then go back and check those videos. So with that said and done, we're going to get straight into it. So last week's analysis, roughly 6 days ago, right, we were looking at the NASDAQ, right? And what we had was this whole thing here had not taken place. So we had market inside of this zone right here, hence why I drew these trend lines. Okay, so I'm like, okay, XYZ, if this happens, we're going to do this, and if that happens, we're going to do this, right? And in this area over here was a low volume node. That's the only reason why I draw out these rectangle boxes. Okay, it's only in low value nodes area. So we had a low volume node. I should not have said value, I should have said volume, right? My apologies. So we had a low volume node in this area at the time of the recording last week. And now we can see the low volume node has changed. A lot of business was done in this area. So this has now stopped being a lower volume node. That has changed entirely. And the low volume node now needs to be adjusted. So this is in fact the new low volume node. And as you can see, once again, the strategy that I use to move in the market is once market makes a decision at the low volume node level, it's either going to use it as a support or a resistance, or it's just going to bypass it entirely. And once it does bypass it, what it tends to do is it will revisit that location again as a retest. This is what we have right here and right here. So if I was to zoom this out, make this a little bit bigger, let's move some of these things out of the way. Right, you'll see that price went through the low volume node, came back for a retest. You could have tapped in with the buy at that level, okay, shut off. You could have, depending on your trading style, right, that's a good couple of days, so that's a good swing, right? You could have tapped out, waited for price to come back into the low volume node again, which it did. As soon as it indicated that it wanted to move over here, you could have tapped in again, and then it would have gone up, and that would have been a couple of days swing. Then you would have had obviously a bit of anxiety, right? Because price came all the way down, right? Then it shot all the way back up again, and now we have price up here, right? So the low volume node that I like to use to help me trade, okay, it is really effective. Right, it is really, really, really effective. Okay, but however, I'm going to leave you to be the judge of that. I'm going to leave you to be the judge of that. Right, so we can see prices pushing up. I'm expecting price to go up. Okay, I'm expecting price to go up not indefinitely. I am expecting pullbacks at certain levels. At the moment, those levels have not shown themselves yet. So because those levels have not shown themselves, there isn't really a lot we can do until we have a new opportunity present itself that will guide us in making that decision as to what we are expecting for market. The main thing that we need to take away from this situation right here, the most important part of this whole analysis as a whole, is what's happening in the low volume node areas of the volume profile. That is the most important information that I can give you right now in regards to what is happening. Everything else is all secondary. Weekly highs, weekly lows, that's all great. But once you start to see that these things are mainly happening around low volume node areas, that will give you really good insight into how you kind of need to be behaving in the market as market does what market is going to do. So with that said and done, until price begins to return back to the volume area high, which is this area over here, okay, I'm going to get rid of all of these layers in the low volume node area. So we're going to get rid of all of these. Reason being is I want to try to keep the chart as clean as possible, which in all fairness is really difficult to do, but we're going to do our best to try to keep everything as clean as possible. Okay, so at the moment there's only 3 low volume node areas that I have an interest in right now, and they will always be in close proximity to what market is doing. Okay, so the second low volume node area is right here, right? Okay, so that's the second low volume node area right there, and as you can see, price blasted all the way through it, came back in for a retest right here, and then it's now moving away. This thing, like I'm telling you guys, this thing right here, okay, it will make your life so much easier. So much easier, right? If you just get your head around using the volume profile. And there are different ways of using it, and bearing in mind, the more systems you know as to how to navigate the volume, how to use the volume profile, sorry, the better it is for you. But bottom line is, you want to be using this, right? There is another system that if you combine it to the volume profile, it turbocharges the whole thing, and that is the chart footprint. My only issue with the chart footprint is that it's delayed. It is delayed. From what I can tell, it is super delayed, right? Because this here is delayed, but it's acceptable because I'm using price levels, right, to see where everything is. With chart footprint, it's actually details on the chart that is delayed. So I mean details on the candle that's delayed. So that can really mess up your trading if you're not aware of that little detail. If you're aware of it, it's fine. Then essentially you trade on the higher time frame. So you be trading, say, the 4 hour, where it really doesn't matter. But if you like to trade the 15 minute, the 5 minute, you can't use chart footprint. You can't. But this is what I've come to realize. Maybe it could have been on the asset I was using, hence why it was like that. But however, I find this volume profile to be way more useful than chart footprint. And I may get chart footprint back because I did have it not too long ago. I may get it back, but for now, this is what we're working with, right? So with that said and done, guys, what I'm expecting is, if I'm thinking about jumping into NAS, taking a position, okay, I'll be looking for market to retest this level and move away. The level in question, because of where price is right now, that is, let me just put a label on it, make things so much easier. So the level in question is 23,385.9, right? If price closes below this level, I'm not automatically looking for sales, so I'll be clear, but it is going to be a warning signal. What I would want to see if I'm to look for sales, or if I want to reposition myself into NAS again, but this time to get some nice little profits off it, is to have this trend line broken, right? If this trend line gets taken out, I would want to see where NAS lands, right? Now, I wouldn't expect NAS to land in this area over here where we have the low volume node. I would expect NAS to come all the way down here, right? If not lower, and that would be 21,703.3. If NAS comes down to that level, actually let me put a price point on it. We just want a dead on point of control. So 21,712.0, right? So if I get price come down to this level and starts to move away, or especially if it visits this low volume node area down here and starts to move away, that would be the perfect place for me to actually stick in some buys and ride it up to the upside, okay? But however, as it stands, NAS is looking bullish. It is looking bullish, right? And the opportunity to jump in, especially if it gives us the opportunity, is if price comes down from where it is right now back into the 23,385.9 level, starts to move away. I could tap in at that level, and at that point I would expect it to go something like this, go really high, then possibly come back and touch this trend line, right? Touch this trend line, and then at which point it might even go up higher, or you might just break it. And if it does, then we know we're looking for sales at these levels. Sales at these levels all the way down to point of control. So if you found the content useful, yes, I know there was a bit of a rant, it happens, right? But if you did find the content useful, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification, and drop us a like. And also as well, go check out that playlist on how I'm using the volume profile if you want to follow along with how I use the volume profile. I think the information is super useful, and you can use that information to build up upon that, and then obviously develop your own style of using the volume profile. All the tools will be there at your disposal. So with that said and done, I will see you all on the next one.